So auto shrink is one of those settings on SQL Server that is usually not recommended. However, it's one of those things that if you're new to SQL Server and you don't understand the ramifications of it, it seems like a really cool option to turn on. Ooh, I'll turn on auto shrink, and then what it'll do is it'll end up cleaning all the space out of my data files that aren't really needed. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. Well, technically it does, but it doesn't do it very wisely or very smart. So most of the time, you've got a SQL Server that's growing and getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time. Well, what happens is you have auto growth settings set up for that to grow really well. But then if you have auto shrink turned on, it's going to, on a regular basis, who knows when, you don't really have control over that. It will just decide, SQL Server will decide it's time to shrink the file. So it'll do what it can to shrink it. And it might be in the middle of a busy transaction time when you're actually going to end up growing the file in a little bit. It tries to shrink it to free up some space, thus impacting the load. And shrinking and growing the file is kind of an expensive IO related thing in SQL Server. So it just adds to a lot of waste. Plus, you end up with a whole lot of thrash if you're continually shrinking and growing the file. Now, there are scenarios where you do need to shrink your database files, but those are usually in the case where something has happened and either your database got bloated and it's no longer bloated anymore, or it's just getting smaller and smaller over time through cleanup or other reasons. And for that, we generally recommend that you turn on or that you shrink the file to a specific size rather than just turning on auto shrink. Auto shrink is one of those settings that in my 30 plus years of SQL Server experience, I have never once seen an environment where I would recommend turning it on. Maybe I'll find one day, but I haven't seen one yet. So we don't recommend using auto shrink. Just one of those findings that we come across and recommend as part of Database Health Monitor. Thanks, and have a great day.